Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sea Asia 2021 C-Suite Conversation. I'm Hoon here, Chief Executive of the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, and I have the pleasure today to moderate a very exciting topic of the future of innovation in shipping. Now, we are in a major transition for shipping, which is accelerated by the ongoing pandemic. Automation, digitalization, remote operations, decarbonizations, these are real major shifts we'll see in the coming years. But what is different in this transition is that it is not just regulatory, but also the demands and proactiveness that the industry players are coming forward with. And these transitions is actually further accelerated by the ongoing concerns of the disruption in the global supply chain. Microchips shortage, closure of ports, schedule disruption, and even accidents, resulting in further bottlenecks in transportation of goods and cargoes. With that, I'm really very pleased today to introduce the esteemed guest on today's panel. We have with us Chuen, Chief Executive of the Infocom Media Development Authority of Singapore, IMDA. Chuen had a distinguished career with the Republic of Singapore Navy, where he was the Chief Navy from 2017 to 2020. He currently leads IMDA in growing Singapore's digital economy to secure our place as an international digital metropolis. I'm sure we'll hear much from him later in terms of the national strategies, which could be very useful learning points for the maritime sector. I've also with me Stephane. Stephane is a good friend, Chief Executive Officer of CMA CGM Asia Pacific Limited on today's panel as well. Stephane has over 30 years of experience in the shipping industry, having overseen CMA CGM's portfolio in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, North Europe, etc. He's currently overseeing the growth and development of CMA CGM's container shipping business in the Asia Pacific region, and we'll hear from him what are some of the initiatives that his company is undertaking and how other sectors or other companies can learn from. So we have 30 minutes of conversation. So Stephane, Chuen, really look forward to hearing your views in key areas. What, and two hows. The first what are the challenges and opportunities in progressing our digital transformation? How, in terms of the role of the startup, in terms of how Maritime, in terms of the trends it can move forward? And the second how, what is the preferred technology investment model? So if you are ready, Chuen and Stephane, let's launch into it. Let me first throw the first question to Chuen. Whether it is shipping or global supply chain, my sense is that we need to go smart. Smart port, smart global supply chain, smart port clearance, smart ship. And from MPA, we have a vision, the interconnectedness that's bring by an inclusive model called the Digital Ocean Initiative that involves port, shippers, and cargo. So Chuen, now, since connectivity is such a crucial component of any digital initiative, now what should we envision for a smart nation? How can a digital infrastructure and services delivery be integrated between a smart port and a smart city?
Well, thanks so much, Hoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and Stephane as well. Thanks for having me. I thought the idea of a digital ocean, that nice play of words, actually captures the idea quite well. If I take a step back, when we think about connectivity in the physical world, I think there's nothing more ultimate than shipping. Because within 1 to 2 weeks, anything you want can be reached and delivered to you around the world. Digital, however, really encapsulates that connectivity in the virtual world, because when data moves, it literally moves around the world, but not in 1 to 2 weeks, but in the blink of an eye. And herein lies the potential, because if you layer the digital on top of the physical, the data is always going to be one step ahead of the physical goods. And that actually provides that potential to look ahead, to preempt, and to be ahead of the curve. I think, Hoon, you mentioned about the various disruptions, be it ship supplies, the port closures, and so on. But if you can enable that data to be shared, the idea of optimizing, looking ahead, shifting your supply chain, then suddenly becomes possible. We've talked so much about supply chain and the control tower HQ and visibility. I think now with the advent of digital technology to a point, we're finally within grasp of that holy grail. So herein lies that huge opportunity. Because fundamentally, digital doesn't just move at great speed. It both allows you to scale en masse, but at the same time to reach down to the last entity, be it your last container or your last package. I mean, that's the trend that we're seeing everywhere. For example, in digital platforms, you scale exponentially across the world, but you're still able to give a customized ad down to every individual. So I think if you can marry these two opportunities together, there's huge potential as far as shipping is concerned.
So Chuen Hong, you mentioned digital platform, marrying it with digital app. I want to now ask this question to Stephane. Now, what areas of digitalization do you think that we should focus on? And knowing that CMA CGM is actually looking at the supply chain now, when looking at cities to set up operations, how would the location smart technology really influence decisions that the companies are making?
Good afternoon, Leon. Good afternoon, Chuen, and good afternoon, all. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for inviting me. Indeed, the maritime industry offers numerous innovation opportunities. Optimizing a ship's port call may seem like a given, but the search of technology to help reduce anchorage time, optimize sailing speed, and modernize a set of procedures for terminal process so that ships can arrive just in time to their port of call is ongoing. The push of a wider adoption of electronic bill of lading, EBL, is another area which can result in significant time saving in processing the hard copy bill of lading documentation from days to just hours when using an EBL. The CMA-CGM group is constantly looking for better ways to be the game changer in the maritime and supply chain industry. This means that businesses like ours, we not only lean towards innovations that address our various issues, but all provide us with a competitive edge in the maritime sector. Although the readiness of smart technology is important, but it is also the evaluation of many factors like the ease of doing business, conducive infrastructure, the regulatory framework, and so on, when deciding on a new business location.
So Stephane, maybe I can just probe a little bit into what you mentioned about the ease of doing business, having the infrastructure in terms of determining the business location. So for example, in your business in Singapore, how do you see the fact that we have a maritime ecosystem here and the fact that we are developing a next generation passport with Digital Ocean Initiative, and also we try to have one-stop port clearance. Do you have any feedback, for example, on how we can bring this to the next level? Then I will ask the question to Chuen Hong on the challenges we can overcome.
Maybe I will let Chuen to go first.
Yes. Chuen Hong.
Stephane, you only get one chance to do this, all right? So the next chance I'm going to put it back to you. No, I think I fully agree with what Stephane said, that the overall environment is quite key. And perhaps here, governments as well as in partnership with the private sector have a lot to do. So I spoke about the opportunities of digital just now, but there are real challenges. I think one key area is trust. How do you, in this massive scale where everything can be sent everywhere, how do you know it's trusted? I think you referred to the idea of EBL, the idea of trade trust, for example, which is one of the initiatives that we're piloting, to allow us to have that framework for that trusted transfer of titles. And I think that's going to be phenomenal if we can do that. I think only a few countries so far have recognized through the MLUTR that EBL within law is actually a unique title. And I think this is something that a lot more needs to be done to get a whole critical mass as far as trusted exchange of key documents is concerned. So to me, that's the very first thing. The second thing is that if you really want to go down to tracking at scale at the last mile, then using new novel technologies ranging from 5G or IoT to track down to the last container at every single point in time, down to the last package, I think is also going to be groundbreaking. And that's something that we need to unlock as far as how do you integrate and interoperate all of these systems together as a set of common standards. Then the third point in my mind is that interoperability, that even if you can get the documents together, you can get the last mile together, having a trusted infrastructure to be that interoperable, what we call that digital utility, I think is quite key to get multiple partners. One of the things that we're piloting, as you're probably familiar right now, is the SG TradeX, where we bring together from financiers to the shippers, to the oil tankers, to the hauliers, to try and make sure they have a common framework that you can connect multilaterally to share that data and again start to move towards that control tower visibility to harmonize across the system. So again, I see three key challenges that we need to overcome. First is make sure that there's that trusted ability to start to go down to the last mile to tap that potential. And finally, provide a a common infrastructure that allows that data exchange. And if we can do that and hit critical mass across both government as well as private sector, I think that speaks to the environment and that ambition that Stephane talked about.
Stephane?
Leon, if I may just add a few small comments on what Chuen is saying, it's very true. I think in Singapore, CMA CGM, just to give you an example, CMA CGM has been able to experience more seamless vessel and port clearances that are managed by the various government offices through MPA's digital port hat SG platform. And that is very much important, that we keep ongoing and having all the stakeholders adhering to that way of working. It's very much important.
Yeah, thanks, Stephane. And maybe to build on what Chuen Hong said, you know, you have the SG Tradex, which form that B2B interoperable type of system. And on top of that, if you layer with G2G type of interoperable system, for example, through digital port at SG, or even the digital ocean initiative, which are trying to sort of bring together the different authorities and the cargo and the shippers, I think in a way it could form quite a seamless digital supply chain. To add also that when Singapore amended the Electronic Transaction Act, and that's when Chuen Hong was still in IMDA, there was a major progress that we have made, which helps to facilitate electronic transaction for business in Singapore. So Stephane, we hope that by doing all this, that it will help our companies based in Singapore, based overseas, to tap on both SG Tradex as well as the digital ocean and digital port at SG system to have that a bit more seamless supply chain experience.
Yes, and I can tell you that currently we are working with your teams, and we are very excited to progress on that.
I thought maybe we can move on to the topic of the how, the startup. Stephane, you know, when we look into the how, startup, marine tech is the new word that we have coined, marine technology. CMA CGM, you have had a recent collaboration with ZBox. What are some of the key learning points that you have there? And is it something that you would encourage other companies to adopt to?
Definitely, yes, Leon. And I think an international incubator and accelerator for innovative startups in the fields of transport, logistics, mobility, and industry 4.0. This is why we, our chairman, Rodolphe Saadé, initiate ZBox in 2018. So what is ZBox? ZBox runs an incubation and acceleration program. The incubation program involves 12 to 18 months of foundation laying. The 8 months acceleration program helps to get startup off the ground with connection to sectors from mobility, transport, and logistics. When we see a startup with a probable solution for us, we would typically initiate a pilot or proof of concept project. This would allow us to understand the work of a startup more intimately while testing their solutions. We would also match their befitting startup with our business partners for a more holistic analysis and peer review. And through the, I would say, through the engagements, we will have a better position in evaluating whether the startups have what it takes to grow the business successfully. And to respond to your question, yes, we invite everybody to join us and to do so, and to accompany all the startups that can benefit to our business. And when we are saying that, it's not only our business, it's our customers' business.
Yeah, so Stephane, I think the point about having an incubation and so to allow more proof of concept and trials to take place and therefore provide a testing ground is important. So I mean, in a way, the Pier 71, which NPA was involved together with the NUS Business School, is about really setting up a maritime startup innovation ecosystem. I wanted to refer this question to Chuen Hong because of his breadth, experience in the digitalization field from IMDA's perspective. Now, what do you think are the latest trends in startup corporate collaboration that you think are the prevalent partnership model or choice? There's the ZBox model, but what are some other prevalent partnership models or choice of innovation vehicles that you think that the maritime sector can take lead from?
Well, so I actually thought that the innovation capacity that's being unlocked by, say, companies through these startup incubators is very key. It's at the sort of the company level. And of course, for MPA, putting the industry together and aggregating that industry as, say, a Peer 71 and through your Mint Fund, for example, I think that's quite key. So you grow it from the enterprise and then to the sector level. But if I may offer one perspective, that then you can turbocharge that innovation if that sector then harnesses that broader tech ecosystem. There are many, many exciting startups in Singapore where we are the startup hub as far as Southeast Asia is concerned. There's a significant boom, both in terms of the numbers, the ideas, as well as the kind of funding. And for a lot of what I call demand companies, means that, for example, it can be a shipping company that has an innovative idea that they want to pursue. But to be honest, it may not necessarily be so core to what they do. And there's a potential to outsource and harness the innovative capacity of supply companies. So a very innovative demand lead, but thinking about what's core to them, but then outsourcing certain elements to innovative companies and startups. And that's where the innovative supply comes in, because there are many of these startups that are aiming to grow their business to scale and providing these innovative solutions to meet that demand. So at the ecosystem level, at the national level, IMDA runs this thing called the Open Innovation Platform that tries to match this lead demand as well as lead supply. And actually, we've been pleasantly surprised. It's been very, very successful. We have more than 10,000 solvers actually, grew that in less than a year. And it ranges everything from demand companies, from MNCs, across all sectors, from finance to shipping. And then it can tap that common pool of innovative solvers. I think if you can do that, you're really harnessing the full potential of that startup ecosystem in Singapore and expand beyond that maritime sector. And that's just food for thought. And we've seen quite a few, at the start, we've sort of grown sectorial challenges. So I think we've started to see some start, and these can be as traditional companies as, companies doing ropes. But they found that, using a startup that does AI visualization for quotations, which the AI company is actually doing it for some other industry, but cross-applied it into the maritime sector. Actually, we've seen such success cases. And I think it's great. It's great for the demand company. It's great for the startup. It's great for Singapore.
So thanks, Stephane and Chuen for sharing, because in a way, experimentation is important, because in a way, we want ideas to blossom, and you have startup companies who are more nimble together, like what Chuen said, in terms of the innovative supply of solutions as well as the investors, and that's where we can get it blossom. However, I have to say that not all experimentation does result in a successful outcome. Wanted to hear from your views. What are some of the common pitfalls that you see in coordinating all these objectives? How to develop this clear investment rationale? How do we design palatable use cases in collaborations between startups and corporates so that, in a way, we can allow not just ideas to blossom, but also ideas to take shape and scale it up into a feasible commercial solution? Maybe we can, any one of you want to start first?
Well, if I may, for CMA CGM, our collaboration with startups stems from the solution that we seek. So we focus on driving long-term value creation and work with startups in the relevant businesses or functional processes within our global setup. The CMA CGM group invests in stakes in some of these startups that we nurture through the box and from outside the box. To give you an example will be our direct partnership with Nautilo Plus that provides autonomous hull inspection, which we deploy for our global fleet of vessels. We also use services of startups. For instance, CMA CGM taps on forecast to improve volume forecast reliability using predictive analytics, which is today more than a concern. And another example, Olio from Singapore has become our tracking solutions provider to move containers in major Thailand inland corridors. And Thailand will be the first country, but not the only one. So we expect to expand that around the region itself with Olio. So you see, we have many examples, and I would say that not only on the shipping side, because we are a shipping company, we are a logistic company group, And we have also our new air division. So we are today looking at a startup able to bring some solutions for our air cargo division as well.
Chuen Hong?
No, maybe I'll just add that you're right. For innovation to really work, it has to fail. If it doesn't, actually, it probably means that you're not pushing the boundaries enough. But how do you bias it to success? I don't think there's a secret sauce. It does mean that you try and sandbox at the early stage to sort of do as wide as possible just to get enough of a sense to get in. But then if you so decide to then work with a startup to further a particular idea, I think treating them as a strategic stakeholder and not just as a vendor, because you're looking at really at the cutting edge, helping them understand your business model and vice versa and how they get baked in. You know, when they say product development in the ICT world, the word product development sounds simple, but it's the toughest to do because it gels the business understanding the P&L, you know, what takes, then gelling what the technology can do. And therein is that secret sauce. We try as part of our open innovation platform to get at that using some tools of design thinking to try and bring that business perspective and the technology perspective to actually grow that product. And what we found is important is that both the demand company as well as the supply startup need to view this as a strategic relationship to really bring it to fruition. Just some thoughts for sharing.
Yeah, it's very useful to think and to hear what Stephane says and both Chuen Hong as well in terms of looking at really how do we marry the demand of the industry with the startup solutions that comes in. And in a way, I thought that what CMA CGM is doing in marrying the sea side and the air side to look at the supply chain actually makes a very strong vertical integration. Maybe just one last question in this topic on startup and to build on what Chuen Hong talked about in terms of the demand supply side, having the accelerator perspective. How do we ensure that the companies, our startup companies, if they are able to find a certain solution, continue to secure contracts and raise equity funding? Is there a way which, for example, CMA CGM as a company, or is there a way which, for example, IMDA as a government, what's the role to be able to help them secure funding so that they are able to bring their project and interest other maritime corporates?
Well, unlike other industries, the maritime sector is still at early stage when it comes to adopting new technologies. We mentioned the EBL, which could save a significant time in processing the hard copy BL of leading documentation from days to hours. I mentioned as well the ship's port call just in time, and that could not be working without your assistance and through the different government offices. I think we are progressing into phase 2 of the system, and we are looking at to take more of its capabilities to further enhance our vessel operations and planning at the Singapore Maritime Port. So to capitalize on opportunities, startups need to dive deep into the industry issues and opportunities that their customers seek. This will allow them to create or adopt existing technology solutions to meet their needs. So in a nutshell, we need to meet the startup to explain what is exactly our industry and what our industry is looking for the next decades. This is very much important that we align and see how we can collaborate all together. And I'm saying startup and shipping company, but as well MPA and other institutional offices.
I think the question is a pertinent one, and perhaps there are 2 tracks to think about it. In the areas where the maritime industry is ready for the innovation, because ultimately the demand companies must be ready. I think the beauty of Singapore is that no other place, or very few other places, you have the entire ecosystem right here. You know, all the shippers, or all the financiers, and so on and so forth. So if there is really a good company or startup or a solution that gains traction in an area that the sector is keen on, I actually see no issues of it scaling. Funding is generally the least of the issue because generally it's about where the demand is coming from. The VCs will go after the startups if indeed it's got a whole Rolodex of project pipelines. But at another level, in areas where the maritime industry is not so ready, therein lies my major point just now, that you do need to, these companies, these startups will actually be doing these solutions for many other sectors. And therefore, the maritime industry should try and tap on that much broader ecosystem of innovation. Because, for example, the use of blockchain to do documents is not just only a maritime issue, it's a much broader solution set. And if you can ride on that to gain that critical mass, I think that will be useful for the overall ecosystem. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuen. So I want to build on your point, and I will throw this question to Stephane. If the industry is ready, the funding will be there, and that there's also opportunities to share from other sectors. So Stephane, let's move into the marine tech type of conversations and discussion. Now, what do you think are some of the perennial industry pain points and some of the technologies that you think that we can actually partner with the startup companies more to tackle these pain points and present the opportunities like what you said between regulator, startup, and the industry?
Well, in a span of 3 years, the box has welcomed 50 startups. 35 of them are in incubation and 15 in acceleration. It means that CMA CGM provide seed funding and partner with startups that could accelerate the CMA CGM Group digital transition and transformation. In this area, we focus on driving long-term value creation and match startup with relevant businesses or functional processes in our global setup. So far, we have invested in 4 startups that we nurture through the box. We have invested in startups outside of the box, as I mentioned earlier. And if startups offer solutions which could deploy only in few markets relative to our global scale, we use their services instead. So this is very much important to mention that it's not only global, but if there is a specific market where startup can be in assistance with our development in innovation, digitalization, we go with them.
Chuen, I actually wanted to ask you this question. Since you are formerly from Navy, you know, how will a technology-enabled future shipping industry look like? So, for example, what are your views on drone technology or even maritime autonomous surface ships and its future potential in the commercial world?
Well, if you ask me the application in the naval context, I'll give you the answer. But as far as the commercial world, I have to say I have to defer to Stephane and his expertise in the CMA CGM. I will just come back to the basic idea that in the digital world, for example, if you are able to bring the both scale, build trust, use technology like blockchain, if you're able to use last mile IoT, 5G, if you're able to have a very common data infrastructure, as I mentioned, SG-TradeX, I think these are the key components that will finally make shipping global in the true sense of the word and data seamless in the true sense of the word. Where we talked about that holy grail of supply chain visibility, I think there's huge potential. I may just sort of throw a left flank out here that perhaps beyond the 3 things that I talked about, I think everybody talks about sustainability nowadays. And therefore, the idea that, to me, there are 2 big trends. One is digital technology that combines, and then sustainability as the world's sort of biggest problem. And therefore, if you can bring the 2 together, and you know, shipping is that interconnecting tissue that allows the entire world's commerce to take place. And if you then insert yourself as part of that connectivity for sustainability and what we call Tech X sustainability, I think there's a huge potential there to completely change the model of shipping. Thank you.
Tech X sustainability. Stephane, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah. Definitely on that specific topic, I think digitalization and technology hold the key to maritime transformation and advancement. So one closely watched trend is the digitalization of processes for port and custom clearance of goods with government. And personally, I cannot wait to see more maturity in the adoption of Internet of Things or AI to optimize business processes, voyage planning, or even vessel maintenance. You mentioned, Chuen, sustainability. It's very close to CMA-CGM Group, Earth. The CMA-CGM Group has pledged to be carbon neutral by 2050 and is therefore keenly supporting initiatives that could drive our journey to zero carbon emission. And in fact, more than 30% of our startup supported by The Box seek to make the world greener.
So there's quite a big ambition in the shipping industry, and like what Chuen Hong said, it is really about how fast the industry can move. And we've seen it, you know, from MPA perspective, that industry players are actually very proactive in this when it comes to digitalization, automation, as well as sustainability. Now, I'm told the time is running out. I really love this conversation with both of you, but maybe just to quickly round up, 5 seconds or 10 seconds each, what is the one thing that you hope to see in the maritime sector, say 10 years from now?
No more paper.
Full digitalization.
Full digitalization, full transparency between the different states, which will allow to drive our business more smoothly and more green.
Well, I'll just say basically digital as the seamless connector for the physical trade of shipping.
Now, shipping as seamless connector, paperless, and make sure we go green. These are some of the disruptive technology that we are facing, not just in Singapore, not just in the shipping industry, but also in terms of the global supply chain. And we will have to continue to adopt a very common vision to embrace digitalization, innovate relentlessly as we bring the sector to the next level. Chuen Hong, Stephane, I must say I really enjoyed this conversation with you, and thank you so much for the very valuable insights. We hope that the audience have benefited from the wisdom that has been shared here, and I look forward to having another conversation with you again in the near future. Thank you so much, Stephane and Chuen Hong.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure.
Thank you. Pleasure.